Afternoon session 12 p.m. Jury not present.
The court said, "Please be seated. Juror number 12 told a member of my staff that he wanted to speak with me concerning a scheduling issue. So if you'll bring him in, please."
Juror present.
The court said, "And just sit in the first seat. You may sit down. You're juror number 12, correct?"
Juror said, "Yes."
The court said, "What's the problem?"
Juror said, "I'm the executive director of a small nonprofit. We are short-staffed."
The court said, "If you'll speak up, please."
Juror said, "We're short-staffed. We're at the end of the fiscal year, a lot of things going on. One thing that is going on is we're vacating one of our offices by June 30th. That's the end of the lease. We haven't been able to negotiate anything with the landlord, and I'm concerned that he might lock us out. If there is a way that the court could intervene so that we get an extension, so that I can continue? I'm fully committed to this, but I hate to be locked out. We have confidential records of our clients and..."
The court said, "Do you have an attorney?"
Juror said, "Yes."
The court said, "And your attorney is dealing with the landlord?"
Juror said, "Not at this point, but I could call him in."
The court said, "So that would be my first suggestion, is that you speak with your attorney. Maybe you can get an extension."
Juror said, "I tried to negotiate that with him and he wants me to stay and negotiate a long-term lease. And we're not going to do that."
The court said, "So you're looking for a short-term extension?"
Juror said, "A short-term extension, a month, maybe 2 months. Not even that."
The court said, "That seems like something that might be able to be accomplished by your attorney. And so I would like you to check with the attorney and find out. You could call him or her this afternoon. If you're not able to get an extension, what would happen?"
Juror said, "He will probably lock us out. He will want the rent anyway. My concern is the records. That we're trying to remove all the records in case he does lock us out."
The court said, "And so what impact, if any, would that have on your role as a juror in this case?"
Juror said, "If it's locked out and we cannot do anything, then I'm here and I wait till we finish."
The court said, "So essentially your request is whether I can intervene in this issue."
Juror said, "Right."
The court said, "I wish I could. But because this is a private matter between your organization and the landlord, I have no authority to get involved, and so I regret to give you that news and I wish you luck."
Juror said, "Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor."
The court said, "Yes."
Juror not present.
The court said, "Would you have all the jurors brought out, please?"
Jury present.
The court said, "You may resume the stand. Please be seated. Ms. Buck, remember that you're still under oath. You may continue the inquiry."
By Ms. Schrofa.
Ms. Buck, I apologize. I'm not quite sure where we left off. But I'm going to pick up where we were talking about NDAs, okay?
Okay.
Did you keep a file of the NDAs that were signed and sent back to you? Or did you just simply confirm they were signed?
I kept a file. I have a file folder for each contractor or vendor.
And would it be fair to say that you had no NDA for Mr. Barnett?
I don't recall having one, no.
And did you have an NDA for Ms. Chow?
I don't recall having one for her either.
Do you recall if you had an NDA for Mr. Chow?
No.
How about for Shanjing?
I don't recall having one, no.
Okay. Did you know that Shanjing worked for G Club?
No.
Did you ask him where he worked?
I did not.
Did you know where Mr. Chow worked?
No.
Did you ask him?
I never spoke to him.
Did you email with him?
Yes.
Did you email and ask him where he worked?
No.
Now about Mr. Barnett, you testified that at one point he was always your first point of contact, correct?
Correct.
And I'm not sure if I recall this correctly. Did you in person ever meet him?
No.
And it's fair to say that the government showed you a fair number of documents from Mr. Barnett, correct? Email exchanges from Mr. Barnett, right?
Yes.
And at times they highlighted for you the different email addresses that he used, correct?
Yes.
And sitting here today, do you know how many email addresses Mr. Barnett had?
I don't.
Do you know if he had an email address called frontsite1@outlook.com?
That's the primary one I emailed back and forth with him.
And Mr. Ferguson here highlighted for you a GS email address that he had, correct?
Correct.
Do you know if he had any other addresses?
Not that I recall.
And when you were sent email addresses from different emails from Mr. Barnett, you assumed it was the same Mr. Barnett, right?
Yes.
You didn't email back and say, which Mr. Barnett are you?
No.
Okay. Now it's fair to say, Ms. Buck, that throughout the course of your work, you never thought you were doing anything improper, correct?
Correct.
And sitting here today, you still don't think you were doing anything improper, correct?
Correct.
You had invoices that you received, right?
Yes.
And you checked to make sure that the person was authorizing payments on the invoices, right?
Yes.
Then you processed the invoices, correct?
First I confirmed the wire instructions verbally.
Right. As you're required to, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, you were quite diligent. You always put that in your email. Please confirm them orally, correct?
Yes, for problems with wire fraud.
Right. And they would be confirmed orally, correct?
All of them.
Right. And if they weren't confirmed orally, you wouldn't process the payment, correct?
Correct.
And you in fact were quite diligent. You kept an Excel sheet, right?
Yes.
And did you share that Excel sheet with anybody else, such as Scott Barnett or anyone else?
Yes, with the authorized people, Scott Barnett, Sean Jing, Gladys Chow, obviously Aaron Mitchell.
Right. And there was no issue ever. Nobody ever raised an issue saying something hadn't been paid or some number was overstated, correct?
Sometimes there would be questions. If invoices were paid, if the wire didn't go through. Depending on timing, sometimes they're held up, like, in the cloud, that they don't see them. But I don't think there were any issues of what I was paying.
Right. And they were generally pretty happy with you, right?
I didn't hear complaints.
Good. Okay. So with that, may I just direct your attention with a little more focus to certain documents that you were shown, okay? And maybe I can ask you some of the questions without the documents. The government showed you the certificate of incorporation and documents from the state of Nevada, correct?
It was articles of organization, yes.
Right. Nothing unusual about that, right?
It's a filed copy for that state, yes.
Right. And they can open a corporation if they want in Nevada or in Maine, right?
They can open an entity anywhere.
Right. And they told you where they opened the entity, right?
Well, I could see it on the articles of organization. It was in Nevada.
Right. But they're the ones who sent you the documents, right?
Correct. I did not form it.
Right. And you had no questions. You didn't ask them why Nevada or why did you pick the state or anything like that, right?
Mr. Ferguson said, object to form. Multiple questions.
The court said, if you'll break it down.
Did you ask them why Nevada?
I did. I asked Aaron again, cause typically, in a New Jersey transaction. It's a New Jersey LLC. It's not uncommon, if you want to use a different state. But we were also getting pressure to close on time because it's year-end, and he said it was just a layer of privacy.
Okay.
For the client.
Right. And when he answered that question for you, did you feel like you got a proper answer from him?
I did.
Okay. Now you were shown a document, which was $12.95. If I could just have that pulled up for you. This is your email to Aaron Mitchell, correct, where you set out your terms of your representation.
Yes.
Okay. And it goes to is that his law firm address that you see up top?
Yes.
Okay. And this was just an easy way to set up the agreement between you and the person you were going to work for, correct?
This was to document a continuing representation because what I signed on for and what we did were not the same. So I wanted documentation of what we were doing going forward.
Okay. And Mr. Mitchell received this email and responded to you, correct?
He did.
Okay. And did he tell you what the estimate was so that you could plan accordingly?
No.
Okay. And did you follow up with him?
I did.
Okay. Now you were also asked questions about. Ms. Schrofa said, "You can take that down." Thank you. You were also asked about several payments that you made, and you were shown a whole group of invoices. Correct?
Yes.
All right. So some of the invoices were from a person named Gladys Chow, correct?
Yes.
And she signed off on the emails and said she was the project manager, right?
That was in her email, yes.
Right. Did you ever ask her what project she was managing?
I did not.
Did you know what the name of the project was?
I don't.
Now let me show you what the government marked as 822. It's Exhibit 822. Ms. Schrofa said, and if we could just scroll down. And I think that the government was focused on page 7, correct? 7 and 8? Do you recall looking at this document? Ms. Schrofa said, let's just stay on the first page. Do you recall this document, ma'am?
I do.
Okay. And it says demolition work to be provided in the following areas. Correct?
Yes.
And could you read what it says below that?
Second level ladies master wing.
Right. Is that ladies in plural?
It is.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. And if we could just go to the next page. You see on the top it says third level son's wing, correct?
Yes.
Do you know if that family in question had a son?
I don't know anything about the family.
Do you know if there was even a son that was living in the United States at any point in time of your representation?
I don't know one way or the other.
Okay. And it said on the same thing, on the same document. It talked about the second-level bedroom bath converted to laundry, correct?
Yes.
You have no idea what that means.
I do not.
Okay. And I don't want to belabor this by going through each one of these, but none of us know what well. Forget about us. You don't know what it means, what the work was when it says. Ceiling to be socket to receive 7 chandelier locations centered on existing arches, right? No?
I do not.
Ms. Schrofa said, and if we could just scroll down some more on this document. And keep going down. And you see right there, it says, daughter's wing level 3, right?
Yes.
And you've already said you don't know if he had a daughter, but what does it mean to you when it says, denoted walls to be removed?
Mr. Ferguson said, objection to form, and she didn't say that. That.
The court said, sustained. The witness did not state.
Do you know if the family had a daughter?
I don't know one way or the other.
Thank you. What were the denoted walls to be removed?
I don't know. I didn't have construction plans.
What are marked openings?
Usually they're on construction plans that I didn't see.
Okay. Do you know if there were even construction plans?
I don't know if there was or was not.
Then it talks about new partitions to be sheetrocked and spackled, correct?
Yes, that's what it says.
And I'm assuming you also don't have an understanding of what that means?
I don't.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. And if I could just have us just keep scrolling down. Just keep going down. And still one more page down. And the last page, please. And that document tells you that there is a total contract price, correct?
It does.
And then it tells you a deposit amount, a midway payment, right?
Yes.
And there is no computation on balance on completion.
Correct.
Okay. And these are just documents that you would process. You would not question whether or not the bill was appropriate, right?
Mr. Ferguson said, object to form.
The court said, so if you'll break it down, please.
Ms. Schrofa said, sure. You know what, it's okay. I'll withdraw that question. We can just move on to the next document. Let's look at document 168.
By Ms. Schrofa.
So is it fair to say that the bills that you got from this Laberbera generally had the same format, right?
For this contract, I paid the installment payments, but for other invoices, he had subcontractors included so they would look different.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. So if we could just go to the next page of this particular document. And then the next one. The next page, please. Okay. Right there. Okay. You see these additional terms?
Yes.
Okay. Were those terms worked out by you or just between these two individuals? The Taurus Fund and Laberbera Custom Homes?
For this particular contract, I don't recall dealing directly with the contractor. So I gave suggestions for contract terms to Aaron or Scott Barnett. I don't recall which one.
Okay. And would you give those suggestions to them by telephone or would you email those to them?
I emailed them.
Okay. And do you know if they incorporated your suggestions or not? It's fine if you don't recall.
I'm reading them. I don't recall if those were my words or if they were Aaron's.
Ms. Strofa said, okay. Let's move on to Government Exhibit 851, please. And if I could just have the middle section, which is 12:33 p.m. enlarged. Do you know what Preventives is?
That's the company that I received invoices for. It looked like for security equipment.
Okay. How about New York Business Systems?
I do not recall.
Okay. And Monster Air Heating and Cooling?
HVAC equipment.
Okay. And the remaining fees seem self-evident. But do you recall with any specificity what those were for?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
I said the remaining 3 payments, Fine Rugs, RDM Fine Art, and Fine Rugs, seem self-evident. But do you recall what they were for?
For rugs and fine art. I don't remember specifics other than that.
Okay. And this email is from you, and you're letting Gladys know, right?
Yes.
Scott and Gladys, correct?
Correct.
And Gladys you're reaching at hchktech.com, right?
Yes.
And Scott Barnett at Frontsite1 at Outlook, correct?
Yes.
Now when you were emailing Ms. Chow at this email address, were you perplexed by the use of that email address, by any chance, back then?
I didn't think much of it. I assumed she was maybe an independent contractor and had her own company.
Okay. And sitting here today, you don't know otherwise, right?
I don't know anything about it.
Ms. Strofa said, okay. Now let's move on, if we may, to 709, please. Okay. And this document. If I could just have it made somewhat larger. Now the government showed you this document, correct?
Yes.
And you testified on direct that you did not know who lived at 373 Taconic Road, Greenwich, Connecticut. Right?
That is correct.
And is it fair to say that sitting here today, you still don't know who lives there, right?
I don't know who lives there.
Okay. And if we could just take a look. The date on the top is January 18th, 2022, right?
Yes.
And is it fair to say that there was more than one of these invoices that you processed?
I believe there was more invoices from Flat Rate, yes.
Ms. Strofa said, okay. So let's just scroll down if we can. Okay. And this one's for how much?
$118,000.
Ms. Strofa said, okay. And if we could just keep scrolling down. All right. And let's just look at the items that are shipped, okay? If we could just make them larger. So I'm not going to have you read each one of these, but do you know where these items were coming from?
I didn't think about it.
Okay. But looking at the document now, can you tell where they're coming from?
It looks like they're being moved from 373 Taconic Road.
Okay. So when you looked at this document and the inventory, you cannot tell if any of these items are purchased and being shipped from the Connecticut address.
Mr. Ferguson said, object to form.
Ms. Strofa said, I hadn't finished, but I'm happy to try again.
The court said, go ahead.
Or whether they were items that were in that Connecticut home that are now being shipped.
Mr. Ferguson said, object to form.
The court said, so.
Mr. Ferguson said, it's confusing.
The court said, you need to break it down.
Do you know that extra large cabinet in living room when it was purchased?
I do not.
Looking on the third side, the chair desk study. Do you know if it was purchased or simply in the Connecticut home and being shipped here?
Mr. Ferguson said, object to form.
The court said, so are you asking whether it was purchased through the system that she was involved with or whether it was purchased ever? What is the question?
Ms. Strofa said, sure. I'll try again, Your Honor. Sorry about that.
By Ms. Schrofa.
You don't know if that chair desk was an old piece of furniture in the Connecticut home being shipped to New Jersey, correct?
I don't know anything about that chair.
Right. So you don't even know, for example. Ms. Schrofa said, let's just scroll down.
Mr. Ferguson said, asked and answered. She doesn't know.
Ms. Schrofa said, I have not asked the question yet. Please keep scrolling down. Right there. You see the credenza large, bedroom 3? Sitting here today. You don't know if that credenza had anything in it when it was moved, correct?
I don't know anything about it.
Okay. And you don't know, for example, on the left side, if the table side small had papers in it, correct?
I don't know anything about it.
Okay. And is it fair to say that you don't know anything about any of these items that were shipped?
That's a fair statement.
And that is because it was simply not your job, correct? Your job was just to pay the invoice.
You didn't ask me a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Your job was just to pay the invoice that had been authorized for payment, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You received invoices for camera equipment. Is that right?
I believe so.
And you received invoices for lighting, correct?
Yes, for lighting.
Okay. And you processed those invoices as well, right?
I did.
Now let me show you what is marked as Defense Exhibit 60613. Do you recognize that document?
I do.
Okay. Ms. Schrofa said, Your Honor, the defense moves DX 60613 into evidence.
Mr. Ferguson said, no objection, Your Honor.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit 60613 received in evidence.
And did you review this proposal? Ms. Schrofa said, Oh, I'm sorry. May I have it shown to the jury? I always forget that. Do you review it at all, this document?
Can you show me other pages of it? I don't.
Of course. Of course. So let's just slow down. Ms. Schrofa said, Can we go one page back? Do you see on the top it reads, provides video monitoring, correct?
It does.
Okay. And one page before this one, benefits of a security operations center, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And is it fair to say that you didn't inquire about what the security operations center was, right?
I did not.
Okay. And let's just look at the last page then. Do you recall what you did with this document?
I saved it in my system.
Did you make a payment on it, do you recall?
I made several payments to Prevenitas. I don't recall if it was specific to this proposal.
Okay, but let's look at the next one, which is 60,614. That's Defense Exhibit 60614. Do you recall receiving this document?
Mr. Ferguson said, we have no objection to admitting it.
The court said, so it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit 60614 received in evidence.
Ms. Schrofa said, Thank you, Your Honor. Do you recall receiving this document?
I believe, yes, I received this.
And you see the dollar amounts on the side? I'm not going to make you read them. But do you see them there?
Okay. I do.
Okay. And there's a total of 392,000 some odd change, right?
Yes.
Did you pay it? Do you know? Not you. I'm sorry about that. I know you didn't pay any of these bills. You authorized payments.
Yes. I don't remember the amounts, but I did make several payments to Prevenitas.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Schrofa said, we can take that down and move to 60618. And it says there, if you could read.
Mr. Ferguson said, if this is being offered, Your Honor, we do not object to it coming in.
The court said, and which one is this?
Ms. Schrofa said, 60618, Your Honor.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit 60618 received in evidence. By Ms. Schrofa.
And I'm going to do this very briefly. This discussed the threat and vulnerability assessment, correct?
Yes.
And it is for the same property that is listed to Taurus Fund, LLC on the top, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it's the attention to Scott Barnett, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay, we can take that down. We can do 60620. And assuming the government has no objection, Your Honor, we would move it into evidence.
Mr. Ferguson said, if they could show it to the parties first so we can see.
The court said, so bring it up.
Mr. Ferguson said, no objection, Your Honor. Thank you.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit 60620 received in evidence. By Ms. Schrofa.
You recognize it, right?
I do.
Okay. And was that dollar amount paid? Do you know?
That's my handwriting on the bottom, so it was probably part of that larger payment total, is my guess. I'd have to see my records, but it was paid.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. And if I could just have it zoomed out. And I'm assuming that you don't know what camera powder coating or any of these other expenses are, right? They just seem to be related to security cameras?
Correct. I don't know what they are one way or the other.
Thank you. Ms. Schrofa said, if I could have 60,621 shown to government counsel and the witness and the court.
Mr. Ferguson said, we have no objection, Your Honor.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit 60621 received in evidence.
Did the government show you this document when you met with them to prepare?
I don't specifically recall this one.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. You can take that down. If I could please do the same with 60623. And if the government has no objection, we would move 60,623 into evidence.
Mr. Ferguson said, no objection, Your Honor.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit 60623 received in evidence. By Ms. Schrofa.
Did you discuss this document with Mr. Ferguson when you met with him?
I don't specifically recall this document being discussed.
And I'm assuming you do not know which innovation technology they actually ended up using. But you paid the bill once you were authorized to pay, correct?
Mr. Ferguson said, objection to form.
The court said, so it's 2 questions in 1.
Ms. Schrofa said, I'm happy to do it.
The court said, just ask them separately.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. What is the document titled?
It's a security camera surveillance system installation proposal.
And the date?
January 29, 2022.
Ms. Schrofa said, and if I could just have, Mr. Salazar, could you just scroll through for me? What is that an image of?
It says property overview.
Okay. And do you know what property it's talking about?
If you look at the first page, I think it's the Crocker Mansion address.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. And let's just go to page 3, page 4, page 5. And is there a page 6? No. Okay. So page 5 is the last one. And there's the total project costs, correct?
Yes.
And I'm assuming you don't recall if you discussed this document with Mr. Ferguson.
I don't specifically recall discussing this document.
Okay. Do you recall if this amount was paid?
This amount, I don't specifically recall. I've paid several payments to Prevenitas.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. Let's look at 60625, still a defense exhibit. What is that, ma'am?
This is an email to me from Scott Barnett.
Okay. And if we could just...
Mr. Ferguson said, I'm sorry. Is this being shown to the jury?
The juror said, no.
Mr. Ferguson said, okay. I apologize. I have no objection to this coming in.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit 60625 received in evidence.
Ms. Schrofa said, now may we show it to the jury, please?
The court said, go ahead.
By Ms. Schrofa.
And it says, Amy, here's a photo of the invoice, correct?
It does.
Okay. And does he attach an invoice for you?
I believe he did. I don't specifically recall.
Okay. And sitting here today, you don't recall if you actually paid that invoice, correct?
I don't even remember what it is.
All right. Well, let's just show you then 60624. Ms. Schrofa said, and don't show it to the jury, please, Mr. Salazar. Thank you. And if we could scroll down just for the witness and the court and the parties. Do you recall this document and its attachment?
It looks familiar, yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. We move 60,624 into evidence.
Mr. Ferguson said, no objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit 60624, received in evidence.
And with this document, he attaches the information from Prevenitas, right?
Yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, and if we could just show that to the jury and scroll down. Thank you. Let me show you what is marked for evidence as 60626, please. Do you recognize? Ms. Schrofa said, don't show it to the jury, Jorge. Thank you. Do you recognize this document, Ms. Buck?
I don't specifically recall it, but it looks familiar, if that makes sense.
Was it sent to you?
Yes.
And is it from an electronic mail address that you recognize?
Yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. The defense moves 60626 into evidence.
The court said, no objection.
Mr. Ferguson said, just one moment, Your Honor. No objection, Your Honor.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit 60626, received in evidence.
Ms. Schrofa said, so if we could just take a look at that document, please.
By Ms. Schrofa.
Would you tell the jury what B&H is?
I believe it's the company name. I don't know. I don't remember offhand.
And does the remaining portion of that line tell you what kind of company it could be?
Do you want me to read it?
Please.
Broadcast equipment.
Ms. Schrofa said, and if I could just go to the second page of this document. And if it could be enlarged for the jurors. And if we could just move our way down. You received this particular document, right?
I believe so, yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, and if I could just scroll back up for a moment. It very clearly tells you, right, sold to Gladys.
Mr. Ferguson said, objection to the characterization, Your Honor.
The court said, so you can just state the words without giving it a spin.
This document tells the reader that the equipment is sold to Gladys Chow, correct?
Yes.
6628, Sky Point Drive, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89141, right?
Yes.
And then it tells you where it's going to be shipped to, correct?
Yes.
And the date on this is June 1st, 2022.
Yes.
Nobody's hiding any addresses, correct?
Mr. Ferguson said, objection.
The court said, are you asking whether, looking at the document, she can tell that something is hidden?
Ms. Schrofa said, yes.
The court said, go ahead and answer.
I took the document on its face. I don't know anything otherwise.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. And let's just keep scrolling down. And can you tell just by the title on the top who generated that document?
B&H Photo Video, I think.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. And if we could just go to the last page, please. The total is for $67,416.73, right?
Yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. And the last one is $60,628. You know, actually, it's okay. I think we have enough. I'll withdraw the last one. Now, Ms. Buck, Mr. Ferguson here asked you questions about the documents in your binder, right?
Yes.
And do you know how that binder was created?
I don't understand the question.
Okay, let me try again.
Okay.
Do you know how he chose the documents?
I do not.
Did he share his process with you?
No.
Okay. He gave you a set of documents and the two of you reviewed them, is that correct?
He gave me the binder to review and stepped out of the room.
Okay. And then you sat and reviewed them, correct?
I did.
And then did you discuss the documents with him?
I did.
Okay. You and I have never met to discuss any documents, right?
No.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. Give me 1 minute. Now you were shown 709 by the government, right? And if I could just have that pulled up for you. We went through this document before. Do you recall what Mr. Barnett's role was in this, in the move, if he had a role?
I don't recall if he sent any of those invoices to me.
Ms. Schrofa said, "Okay. We can take that down and look at 1204. You remember testifying about this document on direct?"
Yes.
Okay. And the government here, Mr. Ferguson, pointed your attention to the job location being at Connecticut, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the total bill for this one was what? $400. Is that right?
Yes.
And did you authorize payment on this? Sitting here, do you remember?
Not specifically, but I'm sure I paid it.
Okay. Did you ask Sean why you were paying $400 for some work done in Connecticut?
I did not.
Okay. Now let's look at Government Exhibit 375. And the government spent a lot of time asking you about these mattresses, correct?
He asked me questions about them, yes.
Yes. What color they were, how much they cost, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you testified that you knew what Hason's mattresses are, right? Are you aware of the company?
I've heard of the name, but I couldn't tell you from where.
Okay. And it's fair to say that the government also asked you questions about this email address for Mr. Barnett, correct? Remember they focused your attention to gsnys.com?
Yes, they asked me questions today about that email address.
Okay. Do you know what that stands for?
I do not.
Did you ask Mr. Barnett, "Hey, why are you emailing me from this address?"
I'm not sure I realized it at the time, but I didn't ask him.
And you didn't ask Ms. Chow, right?
No.
Ms. Schrofa said, "Okay. If we could just keep scrolling down on that document, please." Still $375, right? I'm not going to go over the price of all the mattresses and everything. But you testified at great length about whether they were blue or white and had a checked pattern, right?
Yes.
Okay. You paid for the mattresses because you were authorized to release payment?
Yes, I was authorized to pay this invoice.
Okay. And you didn't question why the mattresses were being bought, right?
No. I didn't question them.
And the only reason you're testifying about these mattresses is because Mr. Ferguson picked this document and asked you questions about it. Right?
I don't think I understand your question. I'm sorry.
You didn't choose this document to testify about, right?
Correct, I didn't choose it.
And you didn't flag it as a document that you found odd, correct?
I didn't flag anything.
Ms. Schrofa said, "Okay. Let's just move on. Now let's go to Government Exhibit 522. You see this document?
Yes.
You testified about this one as well?
Yes.
And there were questions asked about where different things were going, correct? Ms. Schrofa said, "You know what? Just show her the photo again since you had it up on the screen here already."
Mr. Ferguson said, "Your Honor, I'm not sure what this is. Is it a document in evidence?"
Ms. Schrofa said, "It's a government exhibit."
The court said, "Which exhibit?"
Ms. Schrofa said, "It's W5V.1. It's a government exhibit in evidence."
By Ms. Schrofa.
Do you know who this person is?
I do not.
Okay. Do you recognize the brass bookcases in the background?
I do not.
You would not be able to match something you read on an inventory sheet with this brass bookcase, correct?
I can't make that match, no.
And you cannot tell if this photograph was taken in the New Jersey residence or not, correct?
I don't know one way or the other.
Ms. Schrofa said, "Okay. You can take that down." Going back to 522. On the topmost part of this email, right?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson asked you questions about the piano going to the New York office, correct?
Yes.
Do you know why the piano was going to the New York office first?
I didn't ask.
Do you know if it had to do with insurance?
I don't know one way or the other.
How about the mattresses?
No one discussed with me where things were going or why.
Okay. They sent you an email about it. As long as you were authorized to pay it, you paid it, right?
Correct.
Ms. Schrofa said, "All right. We can take that down." You don't know who is at 3 Columbus Circle, correct?
I do not know that address.
You don't know an address on East 64th Street, correct?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Sure. Do you know of any significance to an address on East 64th Street?
I don't recognize that address.
You never heard of any place called the townhouse, correct?
I don't know one way or the other.
Let me show you 1275, please. Do you recall being asked questions about this? I don't even know how to pronounce it, a munial bookcase?
I do.
Okay. Do you know what an immunial bookcase is?
I do not.
If I showed it to you, would you recognize one?
No.
Ms. Strofa said, okay. We can take that down. Let's go to 1279, please. Thank you, Jorge. And if I could just have you scroll down, please. And is there one more down? Go further down. Okay. And you see this email? Ms. Strofa said, if I could just have it made larger. You see this person? It's Alona Musial, right?
Yes.
Was she fired?
I was told she was, yes.
Ms. Strofa said, okay. You can take that down. How about 1275? If I could just have that made larger. And I think I have the wrong number. Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. I may have the wrong number, Your Honor. May I just have a moment?
The court said, go ahead.
Ms. Strofa said, sorry. I must have written down the exhibit number incorrectly.
By Ms. Schrofa.
But you recall Mr. Ferguson asking you questions about an individual named Lee and at G Fashion?
Yes.
Ms. Strofa said, Ms. Loftus, could you possibly help me out with the exhibit number? Do you recall giving testimony about that document?
Yes.
Do you know who Leon is?
I don't know.
Do you know what G Fashion is?
I do not.
Do you know if that company exists today?
I don't know one way or the other.
Have you ever Googled G Fashion?
No.
Do you know if G Fashion had some sort of office or space?
Mr. Ferguson said, objection.
At the Mawa mansion?
The court said, so she's testified that she doesn't know of the company.
Do you know if any company had space and did work out of the Ramapo property?
I don't know one way or the other.
Do you know if G Fashion clothing was left in that mansion?
Mr. Ferguson said, same objection.
The court said, sustained.
Now you testified to certain questions posed by Mr. Ferguson that you felt payment was authorized by the family behind the Taurus Fund. Remember that?
I do.
Okay. Sitting here today, you do not know if there was one or several families behind the Taurus Fund. Correct?
I don't know one way or the other.
Right. So when you said family, you just used the nomenclature, right?
The people I talked to, that's how they referred to them. I don't know anything beyond them being called the family.
Okay. So you don't know how many people were in this quote-unquote family, correct?
I do not know.
Do you know if it was a joint family or a nuclear family?
Don't.
Mr. Ferguson said, objection to form. I'm not sure what that means.
The court said, I don't understand what the meaning of joint family is.
Do you know what a joint family is?
I don't know.
Okay. Would it be fair to say that a family can be defined as a smaller unit versus a family with all of the siblings included?
Mr. Ferguson said, just I guess objection to relevance and knowledge.
The court said, perhaps you could be more specific.
Would it be fair to say that in certain cultures, family would include all brothers, all of their wives, and all of their children?
Mr. Ferguson said, objection, Your Honor. She's not a cultural expert.
Ms. Strofa said, I'm asking for her understanding.
The court said, I'd like her opinion on that. Go ahead.
I don't really have an opinion. All cultures are different.
Possible, right?
Mr. Ferguson said, objection to speculation.
The court said, don't ask her to speculate. She's told you all cultures are different.
Are you familiar at all with the Chinese culture?
I am not.
Do you know how a Chinese family would define family?
Mr. Ferguson said, objection. She said she doesn't know.
The court said, sustained.
You were asked questions about a person named Chow, correct?
Yes.
You've never met the person, correct?
Correct.
You got emails from this person, correct?
I was copied on emails that he wrote, yes.
Did you ask what his job was?
No.
Did you ask who he was employed by?
I did not.
Now you testified about freaking out about the SEC subpoena, right?
Correct.
Okay. And I hope somebody told you that's a normal reaction. But you reached out to Aaron Mitchell, correct?
I did.
Okay. And you had a text exchange with Mr. Mitchell, right? Was that a text exchange that? Ms. Schrofa said, I need the exhibit up. I believe it is. I'm sorry. What was the exhibit? Government exhibit number. Okay. This is 1290, correct?
This is a text exchange with Aaron and myself, yes.
Okay. And you're in green?
Yes.
Okay. So you say you're in Hershey and you can't talk right now. Can I call you later, right?
Yes.
And you then exchange a text with him in November, right? November 9th.
Correct.
And you say you wanted to give him a heads up that I got an information subpoena and deposition notice, right?
Yes.
For Taurus Fund.
Yes.
Can we please catch up next week? Right?
Yes, that's my text.
Okay. And he suggests Monday at 2, right?
I'm the green. That's me.
Oh, sorry. So you suggest Monday at 2.
Yes.
And do you know if you're being noticed for a deposition by the Taurus Fund?
I don't believe it was, no.
Okay. So who was noticing you for a deposition?
I don't remember, but it was for bankruptcy court.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. So let's just scroll down. No, one page up. He says, you got it. Thanks, right?
No, that's me.
Still you?
Yeah, I'm green and then, oop, I'm gone.
So what happens in the middle? We've lost all signal. Ms. Schrofa said, Your Honor, I think we have some technical difficulties with the equipment.
The court said, okay. Well, we have sent an email to the audiovisual department so they'll come up. Is there anything that you could ask about that doesn't require the screen?
Ms. Schrofa said, maybe Ms. Loftus can help me out. Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Ferguson said, do you have the, I think it was 1290? Okay.
Ms. Schrofa said, so Ms. Loftus has it. Thank you so much, Ms. Loftus.
By Ms. Schrofa.
Okay. So you see there is a response saying, sure. Call this number. Right? That's from Mr. Mitchell to you, right?
Yes.
And then you say, you got it. Thanks. Right?
Yes.
And could you not reach him so you say to him, call me please?
I think it was he wanted me to call him on his cell phone and not his work number, so.
Okay. And do you know if he was traveling that day?
I have no idea.
Okay. And then who is in blue now?
Blue is me.
Okay. So you say to him, please call me ASAP. Thanks. Right?
Yes.
Okay. And does he call you?
I don't think he did, 'cause I sent another text.
Okay. And you text him and you say, call me when free please looking for update, correct?
Yes, that's my text.
Okay. Does that refresh your recollection that somewhere along the way he told you he was busy but would call you back?
Mr. Ferguson said, I don't think there was a failure to recall, but that's fine.
You see a response that says, call me when free please?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, that's Ms. Buck's text, Your Honor, as she testified.
The court said, so which are you referring to? Is that in blue?
The witness said, yes.
The court said, so what's the question?
By Ms. Schrofa.
My question is, do you see the first line, call me when free please, right? Is that line in response to Mr. Mitchell letting you know that he was not free to speak?
I think he didn't respond to my earlier text, so I texted him again.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. So let's keep scrolling down. And you see the government showed you this document, correct?
Yes.
And do you know what the title of that document is?
It's too small.
Do you have any recollection of what that document was?
I know that's from the bankruptcy court. It's notice of motion.
Right.
Do you want me to read it?
Just the title, please.
Notice of motion for extension of time for trustee to bring claims against potential defendants.
Right. So is it fair to say you're a lawyer? I take that back. You're a lawyer, right?
Yes.
Okay. And it's fair to say, right, as a lawyer. You can tell this jury that this is for an extension of time, correct?
Yes.
And when Mr. Mitchell tells you he's not intending to respond to it, doesn't that tell you that he has no opposition to the extension of time request?
Mr. Ferguson said, "Objection, Your Honor."
The court said, sustained. She cannot possibly know what is on Mr. Mitchell's mind, what he meant.
The motion is for an extension of time, correct?
Mr. Ferguson said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
And Mr. Mitchell's response to this front page, you testified, was that he did not plan to respond to this motion, correct?
Yes, that was his text response.
Okay. And sitting here today, do you know if you objected to the extension of time?
I didn't respond to this one.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. So let's keep scrolling down. And then you and Mr. Mitchell continue to have an interaction, correct? You keep texting, right?
Yes.
Okay. And he says, yes. About 1,000 people got it, correct?
Yes.
Did you take that as hyperbole or a true statement of fact?
I took it as an exaggeration, that a lot went out.
Okay. And you responded saying, that sounds amazing, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Mitchell replied, like many litigators do, some people are fighting.
Mr. Ferguson said, objection to the commentary.
The court said, don't enhance. Just ask the question.
Some people are fighting it, so if they win, we win, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you say, gotcha. Do I need counsel for this too? Right?
Correct.
And he says, up to you, but I am not getting counsel or responding. Correct?
Yes, that's his text.
And the only document in this chain is a motion for extension of time, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. Could we go all the way down? That's the end of the document, right?
Yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. We can take that down. You also testified about another conversation you had with Mr. Aaron Mitchell, right? Where he talked to you about the cost of doing business, correct?
Yes.
And you testified that Mr. Mitchell told you that the government doesn't like the family, correct?
He said something along those lines, yes.
Right. And he did not elaborate on which government it was, correct?
He did not.
He didn't tell you if the government was the United States government, correct?
Correct.
He didn't tell you if it was the Chinese Communist Party, correct?
Correct.
And he didn't tell you why the government did not like the family, correct?
I don't recall him explaining any of it.
And sitting here today, you have no idea whether or not the government liked or disliked this family, correct?
I don't know one way or the other.
Exactly. And is it fair to say that when Mr. Mitchell was talking to you about the Federalist Party of China, that's the name you recall, right?
That's the name I recall, yes.
You had no follow-up questions for him, right?
We may have conversed. I don't remember the details. It wasn't important to me.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. Your Honor, may I just have a moment, please?
The court said yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, thank you. You were asked a series of questions about a person named Luke Despens, correct?
Yes.
Do you know who that is?
I think that's the name on the bankruptcy paperwork.
Okay, but do you know who it is?
Oh, no.
Do you know if it's a lawyer or not a lawyer?
I don't know one way or the other.
Okay. Ms. Buck, sitting here today, could you tell the jury how much you paid or how much you authorized in payments for security at the property?
I don't know the number, the aggregate number.
You didn't keep an aggregate number in your head for any of the expenses, correct?
I did not.
Right. And you had a limited role to play in all of this, correct?
I paid the invoices that I was authorized to pay.
And you gave a copy of all of those invoices to Mr. Ferguson here, correct?
I believe so.
Ms. Schrofa said, I have nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
The court said, all righty. Let's have our redirect.
Mr. Ferguson said, thank you, Your Honor.
Redirect examination. By Mr. Ferguson.
Ms. Buck, you were asked some questions about the conversation regarding the Federalist Party of China. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Just for clarity, who was that conversation with?
Aaron Mitchell.
And when did the Federalist Party of China come up? When was that conversation?
Around when I got the first subpoena.
And who was that first subpoena from?
The SEC.
Is the SEC part of the United States government?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember, Ms. Buck, you were asked questions about whether Sean Jing worked for G clubs? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, "Can we please publish, Ms. Loftus, GX Buck 194? And if we can just zoom on the top half, please. Ms. Buck, you see on the top right here, it says customer name, Sean Jing?
Yes.
And on the left it says bill to, and it says Taurus Funds, LLC, and Sean Jing beneath that?
Yes.
Is G Clubs listed anywhere on this document?
No.
And Sean Jing's email address, is that a G Club's email address?
No.
Mr. Ferguson said, if we could go to Ms. Loftus, Defense Exhibit 60613. Now, Ms. Buck, you were asked a number of questions about payments for security invoices. Do you remember those?
Yes.
And this is one of the invoices you were shown, right?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson said, we can scroll down. And we can scroll down to page 3, please. And if we could just zoom in on the top paragraph there. Ms. Buck, could you read the second sentence there that starts, having 24/7?
Having 24/7 video capabilities can keep your family and operations safe.
Now, Ms. Buck, who did you understand to be behind Taurus Fund, LLC?
A family.
Mr. Ferguson said, we can take that down, Ms. Loftus. Ms. Buck, I'm not going to show you documents again. You were asked questions on cross about the mattresses. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Those were Hason's mattresses, right?
Yes.
They cost some $30,000 apiece, right?
Yes.
Do you know if those mattresses have any special security features?
I don't know.
Mr. Ferguson said, nothing further, Your Honor.
The court said recross?
Recross examination. By Ms. Schrofa.
Do you know any mattress to have a security feature, ever?
I don't know one way or the other.
Okay, let's look at 194, shall we? You see that document about Sean Jing, right? He asked you questions if there was a G club on here, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know people to have more than one job at one given time?
Sure, people can have more than one job.
Right. This man could work here and at G Club, right?
Mr. Ferguson said, calls for speculation.
The court said, can a person have more than one job?
The witness said, yes.
The court said, go ahead.
I can work 2 jobs, right?
You can.
Right. I could have a job at G Clubs in the morning and at Walmart in the day, right?
I'm sure you can.
There you go. Ms. Schrofa said, we can take that one down. And let's go to 60613. Let's go to that line, family and operations. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. Businesses have operations, correct?
They do.
Ms. Schrofa said, thank you. You can take that down. And let me just take you to your many meetings with Mr. Ferguson over here, right?
Mr. Ferguson said, scope, Your Honor. This is recross. We didn't talk about this.
Ms. Schrofa said, I think it's well within the scope.
The court said, okay, go ahead.
You and Mr. Mitchell discussed the new federal state of China far earlier than June, correct? Do you recall that, talking with Mr. Aaron Mitchell about the new federal state of China more than once? Right? You recall that?
We may have. I don't specifically recall.
All right. Well, let's see if we can help you out. Ms. Schrofa said, if we could just show her. Does that help you out?
I don't know what NFSC is.
New federal state of China?
Oh.
Mr. Ferguson said, Your Honor, the question is if it refreshes her recollection. she should not read the document into the record.
The court said, so you just look at the document and you'll say whether it refreshes your recollection.
The witness said, yes. By Ms. Schrofa.
Okay. You don't really remember much about this because the new federal state of China doesn't interest you, right?
Mr. Ferguson said, objection.
The court said, overruled. You may answer. Go ahead.
I wasn't interested, no.
Ms. Schrofa said, thank you. I have nothing further. Have a nice day.
The court said, all righty. Thank you. You may step out.
Witness excused.